Allen Lund Company looks forward to seeing you at Matt's in March.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
The battle over congestion tolling in New York City will continue for at least another month. The U.S. DOT has extended the deadline it gave the city to end the program. Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine joins Scott Thompson with the latest. After hearing countless stories of truckers who were victimized by lease-purchase plans, the chair of the Truck Leasing Task Force, Steve Rush, joined Scott and Mark to discuss how those stories changed his mind. As autonomous vehicle companies ramp up their plans to put their products on U.S. roads, concerns among the general public are growing. Jamie Jones and Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine join Scott with the details. And finally, spring is in the air, and that means spring thaw restrictions are going into effect. I'll discuss some of those restrictions already in effect with Kurt Turgeon, the director of the Minnesota DOT's Office of Materials and Road Research. And now, here's Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. We've got new developments with regard to New York City's controversial congestion tolling program. Joining us with the latest is Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine. Mark, good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott.
So for a quick recap here, let's catch everybody up. New York City put its I know, you're laughing because there's a lot to catch up on.
Sure.
But New York City put its congestion tolling program into effect just before the second Trump administration began, kind of thinking that it would protect them from, legally protect them from a forced shutdown. However, that hasn't stopped attempts to shut it down from the U.S. DOT. They had initially given a deadline of today to shut that program down, but that's been extended.
Yeah. So, I'll elaborate a little bit further, but just to give kind of the nuts and bolts of this to start, basically what has happened is the administration back in February drew a line in the sand, gave an ultimatum, said, hey, March 21st, this program ends or else. Governor of New York and the MTA basically said, nope, we're going to keep doing the program. We think that we have legal standing to do it. And now we got to the deadline right before the hours before on March 20th, before the March 21st deadline was here. And Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy goes, okay, one more month.
Yeah, 30 days.
So he extends it. So we're in a standoff, but it is kind of funny. It just kind of makes me laugh at the old, don't cross that line. And then somebody does. And it's like, okay, well, don't cross this line. Yeah. That's kind of where we're at right now. But to the credit of the DOT and the Trump administration on this, this is a program that truckers and a lot of the general public have issue with. This is something, those roads have already been paid for, and so there are a lot of issues and concerns with it. And also credit, at least to Secretary Duffy and the administration on this. They're kind of heightening up, a little bit and kind of threatening the idea to pull some funding from New York if they don't comply within the next month. So, there's a little bit strikes me as funny of like I said, having the bluff and then saying, okay, we'll give you some more time. But at the same time, we are going to see how this plays out. Do hope that this program ends because it's not fair to truckers, and I also understand the concerns of the general public with it too, because as I said, these roads have been paid for, and then the state's coming out and saying, well, you got to pay a little bit more, to use these roads.
Yeah, and as has been pointed out by, I think, Secretary Duffy, and I know OIDA has talked about this, but truck drivers cannot choose their routes. They can't choose where they're going a lot of the time.
And they can't choose the timing.
And the timing. And we're talking $21.60 each time they enter the zone. That's the maximum they can pay, but there's no daily cap. So if you're dropping off and picking up and you're going through there, you're talking $21.60 each time, perhaps. Up to that. And I think it is worth pointing out too, as we continue to watch this, and I think it's probably going to play out in the courts. I think that's probably a safe bet at this point. But this is the nation's first congestion tolling program like this. What happens here in New York City, other cities are paying attention to this. So whatever happens there, we may very well see other cities take this on as well. So there are implications here that are worth monitoring.
And I think you're a great point. This is going to ultimately play out in the courts, and that's been basically the stance of the state of New York is that they filed a lawsuit after the DOT gave the March 21st deadline, and so they're saying their response is this is not a battle of wills or a blinking contest that's going on. This is something that will play out in the court system. So unless their stance is unless they are given a court order to cease the program, some sort of restraining order, some sort of injunction, they're going to continue it. So that's what I kind of expect. But, let's see how it plays out in the courts, and maybe there will be an injunction or something like play out because, like I said, OIDA, ATA, I know New York Truck Association, called it discriminatory for your reasons because, when this is played out in the mainstream media, it's talked about that $9 per day for general vehicles. But like you said, for trucks, I mean...
More than double that.
$21 per time coming in and out, not per day even. So, that is... it's definitely a major issue, and we'll see how this plays out.
April, I guess 20th or 21st will be the next date that we'll keep an eye on. Or else. There you go. We'll see what happens there. I did want to ask you one more quick thing here. The second broker transparency comment period just came to an end. We had something like 6,900 comments, I think, that came in. You went through a lot of them. What did we learn?
Yeah. So basically, there's two, and I think there's probably more truckers than broker comments than I've seen. Yeah. I will admit I haven't gone through all nearly 7,000.
That's your weekend plans. We get it.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, your fun weekend plans.
But basically, what we have is, for the most part, truckers say this is about fairness. These regulations to be able to view these transaction records are already on the books. We need to stop brokers from being able to evade these regulations, and we just need to level the playing field. Basically, the broker side of it has gone as far as calling it un-American, and saying that it goes against capitalism, but it in no way is actually going to stop the ability of negotiations or anything like that. It's not going to set rates. It's not going to do anything like that. It's just going to make sure that everybody is able, after the transaction is done, make sure that everything's fair and we see how things are done. And maybe you choose to continue doing business with that broker. Maybe you choose not to after you see how they treated you. I mean, that's basically how it comes down.
Transparency. Yeah. What a novel concept. Yeah, FMCSA is now going to review all the comments. We'll see what they do with this moving forward. But you can get updates on this story and the congestion pricing story as well, courtesy of Mark at landline.media. Mark, we appreciate your time.
Appreciate you. Thanks.
That was Landline Now News for this Friday, courtesy of Landline Magazine's Mark Schrimmer. Now we toss it back to our Mark Reddick. Take it away.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Mark A. Mitchell of Springfield, Missouri. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 31 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 233 years without causing a single accident. Next, Scott Thompson and Mark Schrimmer discuss lease purchase stories with Steve Rush of the Truck Leasing Task Force, and we'll hear some of the concerns about autonomous vehicles from Jamie Jones and Mark Schrimmer of Landline Magazine. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Protect your diesel engine with House Diesel Defender. Restore vital lubricity, eliminate injector deposits, and boost fuel economy by 5% or more. Power, performance, protection, all in one. House Diesel Defender, available now.
Firestone's FD694 drive tire for long haul and regional applications now delivers 126,000 more removal miles than the Yokohama TY517 MC2. Contact your Firestone commercial dealer to learn more.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Welcome back to Landline Now. We've spent quite a bit of time over the last couple years talking about the work of the Truck Leasing Task Force, the group tasked with looking into predatory lease purchase agreements. They did that and came away with a resounding conclusion, one we're about to discuss with our next guest. Steve Rush was the chair of the task force, and he joins us on the line now. Steve, thanks for speaking with us.
I'm glad you considered me for this. It's an important issue to talk about.
Absolutely. We've got a lot to talk about, and to help us with that conversation, we've also got Mark Shermer of Landline Magazine here in the studio to join the conversation. Mark, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And Steve, thanks for being here.
So first, Steve, we'll start there. And can you tell us a little bit about your background in the trucking industry, which I know goes back quite a ways here, and also what led you to join the Truck Leasing Task Force in the first place?
I'm glad to. So my trucking career started in 1965 when I came out of the Air Force, a long time ago. And in my mind, I came in when it was the best time to be in trucking. So I've seen a lot over the years, over the decades. And when I was approached about being on the task force, I jumped on it. In fact, when I heard they were putting one together, I made it known that I would be very, very interested and being involved in that. So I'm fortunate that they did pick me, and then I was surprised when they picked me as the chairman. I think they did that just out of recognizing how old I am.
Hey, old or very experienced and very wise. Yeah. I think that's the way to look at it there, Steve.
I covered most of the task force meetings, listened in on all of them, and one of the things that kind of stood out to me early on, it appeared to me at least that you seemed at the beginning pretty open-minded about the idea of whether there were some of these carriers out there that might truly be trying to provide an opportunity for truck drivers to become owner-operators. But as it went on and more information kind of came to light, it seemed like the attitude of you and maybe some of the other members of the task force may have changed. I guess, would you kind of maybe just tell me a little bit about that progression as time went on and more information came out about how predatory a lot of these arrangements are?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And you're 100% right. You read me right. Because I have a lot of feelings for truckers. I really, truly do. I started with one truck. I had to get my father or ask my father to co-sign a note for me to get my first loan. And I went through hell, through pure hell before I finally succeeded. But so I love the idea that these guys could possibly do that. But as time went along, I began to realize that, yes, there are some good guys with a good lease purchase program, but they're far outnumbered by the bad guys. And to eliminate it, I think you got to eliminate it because the bad guys will find a way to get around it and take advantage of people. It's, I often think too, if somebody thought that they were going to create a competitor, would they really offer that model? I don't think so. So I just think that the model should go away completely unless there are some hard and fast rules that can be monitored and make sure that everybody's doing it the right way. Then I would agree to it. But unless that's happened, that model should really go away.
Yeah, and we'll certainly talk about the recommendations that the task force came up with if they don't decide, the powers that be decide to abolish the model altogether. You did say something there that I think is interesting that we can kind of circle back to, in that you came in, and everybody comes into these task force meetings with different viewpoints and certain biases and certain viewpoints based on their experiences. That's just human nature, obviously. And there were some in the task force that came in, I think, with a kind of a predetermined outcome in their mind about what they would like to see, just based on what they've heard out there. You came in, sounded like you were, as you kind of pointed out, a little bit more on, not necessarily on the other side, but you weren't quite convinced. That said, we heard so many emotional stories from people who had been victimized by these lease purchase agreements over the years. As the chair of this task force and as someone that was listening to them, and as you said, you've got certain strong feelings for truck drivers and what they go through based on your experience, were there any stories that stood out to you in particular and kind of maybe set this thing over the edge for you and said, oh my gosh, this really is a huge problem that we've got to get a hold of?
You know, listening to all of them, and there was a woman on there that did lease purchase. I think she had 3 trucks. She didn't participate in the last couple of meetings for whatever reason, but and I can't remember her name, but she is actually the one that had me going back and forth because she had 3 trucks. I didn't know a whole lot about her, but she did have 3 trucks, and she had gone through the lease purchase. And I thought, you know what? She's making it, maybe. So maybe I need to back off a little bit and not be so hard on wanting to get rid of this model. But then after a while, she changed.
Yeah.
So that's really when I went back the other way, because I've seen horror stories. Oh, my goodness. I had one many, many years ago. I watched this guy. He'd go 6 months on as a lease purchase. And then that wasn't working. He'd go 6 months on as a company driver with the same company. And I watched that go on with him for probably 10 years. So it's just, there's very few that I saw succeed. And as I'm thinking about it, I had a guy come to work for me. It's got to be 20 years ago now. He walked in one Friday night. And when he walked in, you remember the movie, the series on TV, The Fugitive?
Oh, yeah.
This guy walks into our office and he's looking everywhere because he wants to make sure nobody's recording him or that nobody's there that he thinks could go back and tell the company he's coming from. And he asks, are you hiring? So we tell him yes. Well, to make a long story short, he had gone to this company, the same company that I just mentioned about the guy that was on and off for a number of years. He goes there with his own truck. He didn't go lease purchase, went with his own truck. And this company was predominantly lease purchase. When he left, he owed them $20,000 in repair bills or whatever, and he gave them the truck. And these people were so they would hold these guys in different ways, almost captive. But they would take advantage of this guy and anybody that would allow them. It's just,
that's criminal.
Those people are vicious. Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So you look at some of these big companies now. I don't think they want the lease purchase to go away, and I don't think they want that 100% turnover to go away.
I think you're right.
They think that's their way of avoiding being organized, and they don't know how to compete any other way other than taking advantage of people. My opinion.
You know, one of the things that stood out to me during your comments during one of the task force meetings was you questioning, which you did again here today, as we talked about, questioning the idea of if motor carriers were truly, why would they be wanting to create competition? Why would they want to make a new owner-operator who would now be competing, for loads against them? Could you elaborate a little bit on that comment and also maybe just tell me, what do you think, as you progress through this task force, what the true motivation, of these carriers are with these programs?
They don't know how to compete other than taking advantage of people. It's as we all know, it's an ultra competitive business. And very few people succeed, especially the smaller fleets. They struggle. One of the things that always drove me crazy, too, is everybody rates by mile. Well, what does it mean? I used to ask that question all the time. What does it mean it costs you $1 a mile, $2 a mile? How do you do that? And really, it wasn't until I stopped rating by the mile and went to rating by time that I really began to understand my cost. And you have no idea how easy that was to sell it to people. Because customers and shippers would come back to me and say, I never understood it either, to tell you the truth. The only way I could look at it was look at somebody else. So the carriers that have all of these lease purchase operations and all the things that they have with the great turnover and stuff. It just tells me they don't care anything about that driver. All they care about is their bottom line. And they know that driver can't get off the ground. So they're not worried about lease purchase and somebody coming back and biting them. If they were, lease purchase wouldn't exist.
Well, and underscoring that too, we heard from so many, countless people who had been taking advantage through these lease purchase agreements throughout the task force, everything you all did there. I can't recall, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Steve, but I don't recall there being any carriers coming on to essentially defend the lease purchase model. I guess maybe because it's not defensible in a lot of circumstances. Correct me there. Did you hear from them, or were you surprised that you didn't hear from more carriers defending themselves?
Oh, I heard from them.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. Okay.
But were there any that attended the meeting, Steve? Or was that just more
behind the scenes?
No. Yeah. So I got out of the general freight business a long time ago and went into bulk. Bulk is much different. It's competitive, not quite as competitive and as abusive as general freight is. But I heard from a lot of those guys. What are you doing? What do you mean? What am I doing? Well, I've got a good lease purchase model. I said, okay, maybe you do.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't. But I haven't seen any out there that I think are really good. And the one outfit that called me, they explained a little bit of their lease purchase, and it seemed fair. But, if you could have a fair lease purchase program, but then what's the rest of it? Is that person still making money? Does he know if he's making any money? Are you making any money? But I did hear from some of those guys. I didn't hear from any from the van guys, although I did get comments passed through from people at ATA. They weren't real happy with me.
Yeah.
But that's too bad. I'm only telling you what I feel and what I saw.
What you're describing, and we heard this throughout the task force meetings, I think, is what you're describing is a business model in which there may be good guys, treating people right. And you've heard from some of them, and some of those carriers said, hey, we're treating our people okay. The problem is you've got a business model that allows for abuse and mistreatment to take place, which is one reason, I guess maybe the main reason, based on everything that you heard, that you did recommend to the USDOT that they abolish this business model. So I want to ask you kind of where we go from here, and if that is something that you think that they could actually follow through on. There were other recommendations that you made too if they decide not to go down that route. I guess the question I'm asking is, a couple months removed here from everything being wrapped up, where do you think we're headed here with this business model? What do you think the USDOT and FMCSA are gonna do about it?
That's a question I was in my mind when we shut it down, and after the media, a couple of us talked and said the same thing. Is the government going to look at it, and are they going to listen, and are they going to do anything about it? That remains to be seen. I hope they do, because it's a bad model. But who knows what they're going to do? Who knows?
Steve, I just want to say thank you for, number one, talking with us, and number two, your work on the Truck Leasing Task Force. It opened my eyes, certainly. A lot of the stories that we heard and the work that you did there, I think, was more than worthwhile, and hopefully some good comes of it here down the line. And again, we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Well, I hope I answered your questions correctly.
You did. You aced it. 100%.
I can get off track at times.
100%.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. That was Steve Rush. We've got Mark Schirmer here as well. Thanks for listening. For now, we've got a break coming right up, but Landline Now returns right after this break.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a cat scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're truck on a cat scale.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
Welcome back to the show. We've had a couple new developments with regard to the development of autonomous vehicles in recent days, prompting more questions and answers about where we might be heading. Joining us to cover that, along with a warning about scams in cybersecurity and more, is Jamie Jones, managing editor of Landline Magazine, and rejoining us is Mark Schrimmer, senior editor of the magazine as well. Good to see the both of you.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Scott.
Let's start with the latest in autonomous vehicle technology, and really this is more about the pushback against them and, again, the questions that are being generated from what we know and don't know at this point. Mark, you've been covering a letter that was sent to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy this week from families who suffered unimaginable tragedies, and they're concerned about Tesla's autonomous technology there. Talk a little bit about what we've learned there and what their concerns are.
Yeah, so basically there have been active investigations into Tesla's autopilot and quote-unquote full self-driving systems, which isn't actually full self-driving systems. But there have been fatal crashes over the years, and 7 family members of these crash victims, wrote to Secretary Duffy, basically concerned about kind of a push to end some of these investigations, to not make these reporting required after these crashes, and basically just really kind of focusing in on the concerns with Elon Musk and his connection to Tesla and his connection to the White House and the Trump administration. And this has been a question that has been posed all the way back to, Sean Duffy's confirmation hearing to be DOT secretary, looking at, are you going to still look at Tesla in a strict manner and really kind of follow kind of by the rules despite Elon Musk's role in the administration?
Yeah, and as I said, there's more questions and answers, I think, at this point. But the points that they raised have been raised by others, of course, throughout recent months and years as well. One part of this, and I know OOIDA has brought this up as well, but NHTSA's reporting requirements, or lack thereof, are a big concern as well here. And it kind of folds into this conversation.
Yeah. So there's kind of two things here. Yeah. Like right now, there is NHTSA has a standing general order that if there's a crash, there are reporting requirements. And this letter from the families is kind of based off of two things. One, the concern that general order would be dropped, but also making sure that they continue the investigations into existing crashes of Tesla, because there are, I think, 2 different investigations that are going on by NHTSA right now into Tesla. And then there's also NHTSA had a proposal looking at this AV step that's basically right now, just in general of autonomous vehicles, any driverless vehicles out there that are going to be deployed on public roads, the requirements they would have. But the problem with that, and OIDA has filed comments saying as much, that they can't be voluntary. And that's how they have been in regularly, and the information that has been received out of those has been extremely limited. Most of the time, it almost looks more like promotional or advertising material because these companies are not, forced to give real data and show where the flaws are, where the concerns are with the technology.
I have zero understanding as to why the government has not learned that voluntary and self-certification is not going to work. It never works. Yeah. We have the problems with the ELDs on self-certification. Anytime you have to pinky promise to do something to the federal government, I can assure you the data is going to be flawed if it's even provided accurately.
Well, and to state the obvious here, this is a very different scenario because we're talking about autonomous trucks with nobody in the cab.
Right.
Things can go horribly wrong very quickly. And if we are to do something about this and put more oversight into place and more safety guidelines into place, now's the time to do it. It's going to be too late, I feel like, if we continue going down this road.
Yeah, I mean, Aurora just next month in April is planning on deploying driverless trucks on a dedicated route from Houston to Dallas on Texas highways. And even though they didn't receive an exemption, as we've talked about on putting in the warning devices, we still don't know how they plan to comply with that. But yeah, this is coming, and we've talked about it. There have been so many surveys out there that show the general public is very concerned about driverless vehicles, cars, and especially trucks.
Yeah.
But they appear to be coming, and we need a real framework and real data to figure out where the flaws are. If they are going to improve safety the way they say they're going to, then show it to us.
Yeah.
Let the public see it, because as we've talked about, the far majority of the public out there do not feel comfortable going down the highway at 75 miles an hour, looking to their right and seeing a truck with nobody in it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. These things are being driven by computers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how many times do you have to turn it off and back on? That's the first thing that IT says when they come back in.
Have you tried to restart it?
Yeah. Have you restarted it? Did you? There's nobody even in the truck to restart it. So
Yeah.
Maximum overdrive, people. Come on.
Yeah. There's an oldie but a goodie. Yeah. It feels like a toothpaste, one of these getting the toothpaste back in the tube kind of things. And, the government is notoriously not great at, being proactive with this kind of thing, but, we'll see what happens here. But a lot of concerns out there, and as you said, Marcus, it's not just coming. I think it's basically here.
Yeah. I mean, they've already been deployed on these Texas highways, with an operator, safety driver inside. Yeah. So now this is the idea.
Safety driver. I love that term.
That's what they call them.
Yeah.
But, it's just going to take one horrible tragedy with one of these vehicles to set everything off.
And the other thing that I'll just say, one more point with this, is even if say the next 6 months, everything goes well with this soft launch, as far as being deployed on the Texas highway, that really isn't going to tell us much of anything when you're talking about eventually whether this could be launched on a full scale, because we're talking about Texas highways, probably good weather.
Right.
We're talking a straight shot.
Flat.
They're going to,
flat.
And we're getting the information from the company that is
and
promoting this
they're going to be, actually to the facilities a human driver will take over at some point. So we're talking straight shots. To me, I think they've already proven that, yes, they are capable, if everything's going well, of moving these vehicles down a highway back and forth without a driver in them. They've proven that. But what is going to happen when the variables, the unforeseen circumstances, whether it's construction, a bad wreck, just anything, a pedestrian, something. I mean, I went down the highway. It was just a few weeks ago. A ladder fell off a truck and was just in the middle of the highway. We're going down 75 miles an hour. So all of these things. And then when you add this with how many drivers of passenger vehicles behind, might be looking at their phone for a second or two. And if these trucks, these phantom braking is a real issue for these driverless trucks.
Yeah.
If they're stopped, it's not going to take much for there to be a rear end
chain reaction
collision.
Crash. Yeah, for sure. Let's shift gears here, and somewhat related, I guess, as we stand by and watch these technological capabilities get better and better and at a faster and faster pace.
The rise of the
machines. We're all doomed. Good luck, everybody. But we do have more cybersecurity concerns with all of this as well. It's going to kind of take a village, I guess, to beat back the criminals here. And Jamie, the National Motor Freight Traffic Association has a new resource to help, and it is called, I'm going to look at it here, the Owner-Operator Core Cybersecurity Controls Checklist. Tell us about it.
Well, and it's not new news to anybody that scams are just so prevalent.
Rampant.
I mean, it's almost like a new business model out there. If you can't make money legally just go ahead and
steal it from people.
Cook up a scam.
Yeah.
And with AI and everything else that you have out there, it's so much easier because it doesn't sound like the Siberian prince that has the $1 million with,
Oh, did you get a Siberian prince email? I knew the Nigerian prince, but that's
Siberian.
A new one. Oh, cool.
There's
all right.
all types of princes.
Yeah,
out
I guess
there.
they're everywhere.
Well,
that's true.
Again, English one.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yeah.
But no, I mean they're hitting your phones all the time. They're in your emails. They're everywhere. And the problem is you almost get sick of hearing about this, and it's kind of getting to the point that you want to tune it out. But the scams are so prevalent that is the door. That is the gateway. And owner-operators in particular are very susceptible to this because they're a small entity. They probably don't have a lot of the safeguards that a larger motor carrier may have.
Well, just the sheer number of text messages and emails that they get as well.
Correct.
Yeah, it gets confusing.
It is a lot. And so even though you gave a very long name for this checklist, what I'm really impressed with on the National Motor Freight Transportation Association, I said that wrong, Traffic Association. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
They are so good about plain talking this. So average folk who don't spend a lot of time with IT or aren't particularly savvy will have a very easy time getting through this. And when you talk about the different things that you need to do, you need to keep reminding yourself that protecting your identity, protecting that identity of your motor carrier, of your business is going to save you a lot of headache, heartache, and money. So even though this stuff is, it's just a lot that you have to do to protect yourself. But we've seen recently, and we were laughing about it before we went on air, that one of the big ones going around right now is toll scams.
Yeah.
And there's
I've gotten one.
Yeah, there's tons of them. I actually had an individual that forwarded one.
Do not do that, please.
Forwarded a text scam to my phone and said, check this crap out.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're doing it all wrong, dude.
Right, yeah.
No. And so that's the kind of stuff you don't want to do. And that's the kind of thing in this checklist that you can learn from and make sure that you are doing your due diligence, because this is how broker fraud is happening.
Yeah.
This is how identity theft of motor carriers is happening. This is how your bank accounts are getting drained.
Yeah.
And it's nightmarish.
Yeah, and they're just going to send thousands of these out, and if 2 or 3 hit, then
made
great.
their, yep.
Yeah,
it's a numbers game,
and it doesn't matter. Like we've seen, Oregon doesn't have toll roads, Missouri doesn't have toll roads. They're still sending them out saying, "Hey," because all you have to do is just go, "I didn't even know Missouri had a toll road," and then hit click, and it's done.
Well, you
over.
can be vigilant about this stuff, and I feel like I'm pretty good about it.
Yeah.
But it only takes one mistake and clicking on one thing, and then falling down that rabbit hole for you to be in a lot of trouble.
Well, and it's just, there's so many things out there. And, just a plug for the OOIDA Foundation as well. They've got cybersecurity training available to people. And again, same thing. They plain talk it. It's very accessible. It's something that you don't need to bring your kid in to explain it to you, like I've had to do from time to time. Like, here, call your grandmother. I don't know how to use my smartphone when I first got one.
Yeah, well, it is. It's confusing. It's again, it just takes one mistake for you to fall down a bad path, and you got to stay vigilant. And some of it's common sense, but a lot of it is just
a lot of work.
A lot of work for sure. Speaking of work, Jamie and Mark, you do great work. People can check that out at landline.media, the Siberian Prince and Princess of Landline Magazine. Jamie Jones and Mark Schirmer, we appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome.
Time now for a break, but we've got more Landline Now coming up on the other side. Stick around.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Spring is in the air in much of the country and soon to arrive in others. And while that's usually good news for most folks, it does sometimes come with complications for others, including some truckers. One of those complications is what is generally called spring thaw restrictions, a weight limit and possibly other restrictions that come into effect as the soil under the roads thaws out. It's usually something that happens, for the most part, in the northern tier of states, although some that are a bit further south have them as well. In Minnesota, some of the spring restrictions are already in effect. The Minnesota Department of Transportation's website shows them starting anywhere from March 3rd to March 17th. Minnesota state law indicates that the default weight limit under the restrictions is 5 tons on an unpaved road, 10 tons on a paved street or highway. The penalties for violating the restrictions in Minnesota is based on how much over the limit you are, but the law calls for civil penalties that can be from hundreds to thousands of dollars. I spoke recently with Kurt Turgeon, the director of the Minnesota DOT's Office of Materials and Road Research, about spring thaw restrictions in that state.
So when we build a pavement, we're trying to carry the load, spread the load across the native soil. So in the winter, it freezes down to, say, 3, 4, 5 feet. And so a frozen ground spreads the load very efficiently. And we actually do winter load increases for a significant part of the winter. But then in the spring, it starts to thaw from the top down. So then water gets trapped on that frozen layer underneath. So we have pavements sitting on top of a saturated gravel base, and that is when the pavements are at their weakest. And that is why we try and limit the weights. We don't have overweight permits during spring load restrictions, and we because the pavements themselves are sitting on top of a very mushy, saturated base for several weeks every spring.
Okay. Now, I know that there are some other restrictions that apply to trucks on those routes that are covered by spring thaw restrictions. I guess lower speed limit, for example, for some vehicles. Can you kind of go over if there are any other restrictions that would apply to those routes?
Well, sometimes if we have to move something during spring load restrictions, we sometimes do get caught with, say, a very large load. We have done some special things where we move them at night because then the road might refreeze some. And then we also allow them to actually straddle the center line on a 2-way road and so to get the loads off the edges of the pavement. So we've done those kinds of things in special cases. But for the most part, it's not that much of a change.
Okay. Kind of looking at this, I know that some roads, and again, I've looked at several states, so sometimes I get a little mixed up on which state is which, but some roads are covered by these, other roads aren't. How does the state determine which highways or roads these limits apply to? Is that a matter of the material, the soil, or a combination of all those factors?
Well, you have the interstate system that has to be all held to the federal standards all the time. So those aren't really involved. But yeah, we do have roads where we test them to see how strong they are and watch how quickly they're deteriorating. Maybe if they're close to the end of their life, we might restrict them. And there are times even during the spring thaw, maybe we weren't restricting it, and all of a sudden we realize, well, this road is deteriorating very quickly, and we actually put up restrictions during spring load restrictions, just because we are a little surprised at just how poorly the road is performing. So it is a kind of a road by road, segment by segment analysis. Yep.
You bring up something else there in what you said. I know that some states have very set dates when their spring thaw restrictions go in. Some states vary them based on weather or other environmental conditions. What is the situation there in Minnesota?
Well, what we found based on research at our Minroad facility is, it's not too surprising. A certain amount of heat starts causing the pavements to thaw out. And the heat is based on air temperature, day and night, and also the height of the sun. So we have a calculation that sort of predicts when the thawing is supposed to start. And that calculation sort of scores points day by day, depending upon how high the sun is in the sky and how hot the days are. And as those points accumulate, then we start realizing that we're getting close to the point where that thawing directly under the pavement is going to start happening. So it's so the state's divided up into 6 different zones, and we watch each zone separately.
How do you inform, especially the drivers of large vehicles like commercial trucks, how do you inform them of what highway is on spring thaw restrictions at what time in what zone? Because that would seem complicated to me to get that across.
Well, for the most part, the zones, other than, like I say, a few rare roads where we have to, okay, this road is really bad and it's a special case. But we have a load limit website where people can go in and sign up to have an email and or text message sent to them that says, for this zone in Minnesota, the winter load increases are coming off, and for this zone, the spring load restrictions are starting. And we have a commitment to do that 3 business days prior to anything happening. So we're kind of very careful about watching the weather, predicting the changes, and then making sure we get those notices out before we get the roads into a condition that is going to cause them too much damage.
The next question I've got is one that's a specific thing that over the years, and I mean, I've been doing this for about 22 years now, but we've talked to truckers that have been in this situation in some of the northern states. And this is when someone is on a route, they're making deliveries as scheduled, and the restrictions go into place. And sometimes these people will find themselves in a situation where they're in a town, but all the possible routes out are covered by thaw restrictions. So technically, they don't have a highway they can go on. And of course, if they're on a schedule with more deliveries or a pickup schedule, it can be a real problem. Do you have any advice for someone in that instance?
Well, we're hoping that the 3 business day warning would prevent people from getting into that position. But yeah, it's if they're not in a divisible load, then that almost they need to call like the permitting office and say, what can I do? And I did mention we have done special things for some very, extreme loads. And there may be instances where, if it's only 5 miles so I would say call the permitting office and tell them what the situation is. But hopefully that 3-day notice. And obviously, if you're going state to state, having that notice from 5 or 10 different states is going to be a little bit confusing to keep up with. But that's our hope, is that by giving people that much early warning that they wouldn't find themselves in that predicament.
Again, that was Kurt Turgeon, the director of the Minnesota Department of Transportation's Office of Materials and Road Research. And our topic has been spring thaw restrictions in that state. Chris mentioned the Spring Thaw website. That site's address is dot.state.mn.us/load limits. Again, that's dot.state.mn.us/load limits. And to call the Department of Transportation's Permits Office, just dial 651-296-6000. Again, that phone number is 651-296-6000. We will have that phone number and a direct link to the Spring Thaw website on our website, landlinenow.com. Just click on the photo or headline at the top of the page, and that will bring you to all the website links, email addresses, and phone numbers we mention here on the show. That's our program for today. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.